Okay, we'll be starting in 1 minute.
Welcome to the OpenERP U.S. Accounting webinar provided by Ursa Information Systems. I'm Dr. Michael McRae, Director of Operational Consulting for Ursa Information Systems. With me today are Mr. Ray Carnes and Mr. Balaji Kannan, Ursa's lead implementation engineers. Shown here is the agenda for today's webinar. Following a brief overview of OpenERP and Ursa Information Systems, Mr. Ray Carnes will demonstrate the various scenarios and address the configurations required to support these scenarios. We will conclude with a question and answer session in the time remaining. Please note that all slides, recordings, links, and ongoing discussions are available at the URL provided on this slide. Now for a brief overview of OpenERP. OpenERP is a comprehensive suite of business applications that facilitates the flow of information to and from all business functions, allowing for automation and optimization of business processes. Its unique modular approach allows customers to start with one application and add other modules later. Customers keep the benefits of an integrated software that allows for expansion when desired and/or required. OpenERP is also flexible as it allows you to customize the user interface and manage your business processes in only a few clicks. Furthermore, because it's open source, the code is published and collaboratively developed. Shown here are just a few of OpenERP's business applications, including sales, customer relations, project management, warehouse management, manufacturing, accounting, and human resources, just to name a few. As OpenERP's gold partner in the United States, we at Ursa Information Systems focus primarily on 3 ERP services and more detailed transformation project services. That concludes the introduction, and I will now turn it over to Mr. Ray Carnes for the remainder of the webinar. Enjoy.
Thanks, Mick. Okay. Just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay. So, as Mick mentioned, we have 5 topics that we're going to cover today. The first one touches a little bit on what OpenERP version 7 offers accounting users. For those of you who have looked at the software, you've probably noticed that there are a few navigation improvements, something called breadcrumbs, which allows you to get further forward or backwards from a business document. So you can see it's possible to go from a sales order to the invoice and back without having to use the back button on your browser. The next improvement is buttons that have been colored red to help you know what the next step is. So it's very useful for users on a screen to have a hint about what they should do next by looking at the red button. But both of those you're going to see me use today. The third example on this slide is what we call chatter in OpenERP. And this is a combination of email and a social network wall that keeps track of all of the conversation that might go on about a document like an invoice. The customer received the invoice. Do they have any questions about it? What was the latest follow-up conversation that was had with them? This information can be shared with the customer and can also be kept private from the customer, and both emails and notes can be recorded for any business document in OpenERP. Something else that version 7 did was to change the partner model the data structure that OpenERP uses to represent information. So instead of partners and addresses, like we had at the previous version, we now have companies and people. And this is a much better way of modeling the real world, where in our business, everyone's either a company or a person. There's better support for multiple people working in multiple offices at companies. It's possible for you to search in accounting for people who purchase things or the company that that person was purchasing on behalf of. It's also possible for you to have an order, an invoice, and a delivery to 3 different customers, each of whom can be people or companies. There's better B2C support, business to customer. People can buy things now. In version 6.1, it was a little harder to sell things to just a person rather than a partner. So at version 7, customers can be people, companies, or they can be people at companies. So our second topic today was going to be going through the order to cash examples. And I just wanted to let you know that we will be able to take questions at the end of the webinar. But if you do have any questions that come up during what you have seen, feel free to ask those with the send note button or chat, depending on which client you're using. We'll make sure that we answer those at the end. So for order to cash, I'm going to demonstrate 2 scenarios. I'm going to demonstrate a product that's in stock, and there's going to be 4 steps to that scenario where we place the sales order, we deliver the product, we invoice the order, and we receive payment. I'm also going to demonstrate a scenario where the product is not in stock. So we are going to be needing to purchase that from a supplier, receive it into our warehouse, and in addition to invoicing sales order to the customer, we're going to invoice the purchase order from our supplier. For the first scenario, the first 2 steps in the scenario, placing the sales order and delivering the product, don't involve accounting. Accounting entries don't actually appear until the 3rd step, when we invoice the sales order. That's when our accounts receivable debit occurs.
The rest you will put it in the brokerage money market. There is no...
And we have a corresponding credit to our sales account to represent the value of the sale. Second step, when we receive payment from our customer, we're debiting our cash or bank account, and we're clearing off that accounts receivable. So those are the 2 accounting entries you're going to see in this first example. So a little bit about the company that we will be using for our scenario demonstrations today. You can see that we sell several different products here. We sell finished products, which are products that we actually manufacture, and we sell products that we resell from our suppliers. We also appraise. We're a painting company, so each of these products is a painting of some form. We have an appraisal service where we appraise the value of the painting, and we also have a painting service here that represents something that we're going to see when we look at our manufacturing cost flows. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sales order, which starts in OpenERP with a quotation. So I'm going to hit the Create button here, and I'm going to start to enter some information into OpenERP to represent the order. So I'm going to choose a customer here, and I'm going to choose a product. And remember, this is a product that's in stock. So our warehouse has this finished product. It has a price of $25. So I'm going to confirm this sales order, and I'm going to now have a look at the delivery order. You can see the red buttons that are telling me that the next steps here would be to either look at the invoice or look at the delivery order. Since I don't want to invoice until I've actually delivered the product, I'm going to have a look at the delivery order here. OpenERP shows me that this is ready to deliver. So I can hit this deliver button here. I get a screen allowing me to choose the quantity that I need to deliver. This is so that if I have more than one product on the order and I need to only deliver portions of those products, I have the ability to enter at this screen exactly what I'm sending out the warehouse, and OpenERP will create a back order automatically for anything that I'm not delivering. So for now, I'm going to deliver this product. You'll see that the status of the delivery order changes to delivered here. The next thing I'm going to do is use these breadcrumbs to go back to the sales order. And the sales order is now showing that it's in a sale to invoice state, which means that I have to invoice this. So I'm going to click this red Create Invoice button. And there are a couple of different ways that I can invoice the order. I can invoice a percentage of the order. I can invoice just particular products on the order. I can invoice for a deposit. In this particular case, I'm going to invoice the sales order, the complete sales order. So OpenERP creates a draft invoice for us. Once I check this information, add our terms and conditions, I can validate it. And at this stage, this invoice hits the books, so to speak. So I'm going to open up a second tab, and I'm going to show you the journal items that have been represented by that sales order. So I'm going to choose the sales journal. That's where sales get recorded through that journal. You can see the two journal entries that have been represented here. We have a credit of $25 to our sales account representing the sale, and we have a debit here of $25, and that goes into our accounts receivable account. So that's the first set of accounting entries that we have, and that we that match the third step of invoicing for that product. We actually had a question that I think is relevant to answer now. Why is there no accounting entry when we deliver a product? The answer to that question is that because we have configured OpenERP with Anglo-Saxon accounting, which better matches the requirements of our US customers. But without this configuration option, then you can have an accounting entry when you deliver the product. And when you see the third scenario that we're going to be covering today, you will see stock accounting entries that also happen when we deliver a product. So I'm going to continue on with this scenario. I'm going to go back to our invoice, and I'm going to record payment for this invoice from our customer. So I'm going to click the Register Payment button, and I'm going to register a cash payment. I'm going to click the red Pay button, and our invoice now moves into the paid state, indicating that we've received money. So again, if I open our second tab and I go to the cash journal, you can see the debit representing the deposit of money into the cash account or a bank account, and you can see the $25 credit here that's going into our accounts receivable to clear off what our customer owed us for that sale. So if we go back to the slides and just remind you the two steps that we saw, we invoiced the sales order, and we saw accounts receivable and sales accounts get debited and credited, and we received the payment, and we saw our cash and accounts receivable accounts get debited and credited. So that was our first example. I said that I was going to show you two. So we're now going to follow through something similar with a product that's not in stock. So here's our second example, order to cash, where we actually need to purchase items from our supplier and receive them into stock before we can deliver to our customer. So again, you're going to see the first set of accounting entries when we invoice. You're going to see the same accounting entry when we receive payment from our customer, and now you're going to see an entry where we invoice the purchase order from our supplier, and where we send the payment information. You're also going to see another accounting entry. So let's have a look at that. We're going to start off in the same way, where we create a quotation. And for the purposes of our demonstration, we've archived everything from the previous scenario as it relates to accounting, just to make sure that we don't mix up our accounting entries. It'll just make the demo a little easier to understand. So we choose the same customer, and this time we're going to choose a product that we don't have in stock. So you can see that OpenERP is warning us. saying that we don't have any of this item to sell. So what I'm going to do is just make an adjustment to our sales order for the 15th, and I'm going to confirm that sales order. That just gives us time to receive the product, then turn around and send it to our customer. So the next step here is to look at our delivery order. You can see that this time OpenERP says the status in blue. You can see it's waiting availability. So OpenERP has created a delivery order, and the warehouse has access to that information, but it's also showing that we aren't able to fulfill that delivery order yet. So I'm going to go up to the purchases menu, and OpenERP has automatically created a purchase order for us. Again, for the purposes of the demo, we're running something in the background called the scheduler, which is a process that runs usually overnight or in between shifts and creates these documents for us automatically. So if we open up our request for quotation here, we'll see that the scheduler has ordered one of our products from our supplier to match what we sold. So I'm going to confirm this order here. Then I'm going to go and receive these products. So just like a delivery document was automatically created for me, a receiving document was automatically created for me. And I can use that at the warehouse to receive the products. Same way I got a second screen for delivery, I get a second screen for an incoming shipment or a receiving document. And the reason I have this again is to support back orders. If the supplier receives an order for more than one item and they don't send me all of the items, I can receive just what they've sent me, and an automatic back order will be created. So my incoming shipment shows that I've received the product. So I can now go to the warehouse to look at the delivery orders. OpenERP has updated the status of this delivery order. You can see in blue that it now shows ready to deliver. So I'm going to deliver that item here. Again, the red buttons tell me the next steps. And so now if I go back and I have a look at the sales order, again, I need to invoice this sales order. So I'm going to create an invoice. I'm then going to validate that invoice. And I'm going to open up a second tab again to have a look at the journal items in the sales journal. So just like the first scenario, you can see, just like the first scenario, you can see that this time this is a little cheaper, this product. It's only $10 because we just buy it directly from our supplier. So our sales account's been credited $10 and our accounts receivable for this particular customer has been debited $10. So if we go back and back here, we're going to record payment on this invoice now. So I'm going to click register payment again, and I'm going to record a payment to the cash account. Then if we go look at our journal items, this time I'm going to move down to our cash account, cash journal, and you can see that the journal entry shows a debit of $10 to our cash account and a credit of $10 to clear the accounts receivable from our customer. So now that we've received information from our now that we've received cash from our customer, it's probably time to pay our supplier. So we go back to the purchase order and we open up that purchase order, and we're going to receive invoice. And so OpenERP will automatically create a draft invoice based on the purchase order, and this is a chance for you to match up the paperwork that you get from your vendor or supplier, just to make sure that they haven't changed their prices since the quotation and the purchase order went out. So I'm going to validate this invoice here, and then I'm going to have a look at the second tab here, this time looking at our purchase journal. And you can see that the $5 cost of this item that we purchased has been debited to our purchases account, and now we have an accounts payable credit to indicate that we owe our supplier $5. So I'm going to move back to the Purchase Orders tab, and I'm going to click our Pay button. Same thing, I'm going to have a cash payment here for our supplier. And I'm going to go back to the journal items and move down to our cash journal. And in addition to the journal entry that was here before, representing the information about our customer payment, we now have information about our supplier payment. So the $5 credit to cash, representing that we've had $5 leave the company, and a $5 debit on our accounts payable account. So again, the scenario that you saw was a little more detailed than the first scenario. It involved invoicing for the sales order from the customer and receiving payment, and then it involves recording the invoice from the supplier and sending payment. So for our first scenario, order to cash, the benefits of doing it this way in OpenERP is that you don't have to enter information twice. Your order, your delivery, and your invoice are all using the same shared information, and you don't have to create a delivery document or an invoice. OpenERP can generate draft invoices for you automatically, or it can allow you to create them when it suits you. You saw that we could match invoices and we could match POs to the document that OpenERP had automatically created for us. And so when you configure your system this way, your sales and deliveries are all based on real-time stock levels. And so that allows you to inform your customers whether you have something in stock, and also to use something called lead times to give them an estimate on when something can be available based on how long it takes for you to get it from your supplier. So with all of this information, it's really possible for you to understand and lower your inventory costs. If you know how much you have in stock and you know how that is being changed by what you're selling, and since OpenERP also gives you a virtual stock for every product, which includes things like purchases that you've made, it's really possible for you to get a handle on your inventory and lower your costs that way. So I'm going to move on to the second scenario. I do have a couple of questions, but I'm going to answer them at the end because they're going to take a little bit longer than we have. Just to show you what you have to set up in the system to see what you've seen the system do. For every partner or customer or company, you need to have an accounts receivable and an accounts payable account set up. This is what tells OpenERP where to send those debits and credits. Second thing you have to have set up is on the product accounts. You have to have an income account and an expense account set up. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about inventory valuation when we get to our manufacturing cost flow, but that's an option for you to have additional accounting entries shown. So with that, I'm going to move into our third topic, the manufacturing cost flow. And we're going to show a scenario that builds on the two that you've seen. In addition to purchasing something from a supplier, we're actually going to manufacture something in-house. So we're going to manufacture this painting. So we do have an extra step in here that we have to manufacture this product. So this is quite a detailed scenario, but the purposes of this scenario isn't to review the accounting entries that would be booked through our sales, purchase, and cash journal. This is to show you how OpenERP supports what we call stock accounting. So stock accounting represents the value of goods as they move through your internal manufacturing or production environment. And the first account that we're going to show you today is something called a goods received account, which if you're an accountant, you can also refer to this as an accrued inventory account or an AP clearing account. This account represents goods that you have received that you haven't yet assigned to a supplier. So the first thing we're going to see in our scenario is that our goods received account is going to show a value of $10. And then once we start manufacturing that product, that $10 of goods is going to move into our raw materials account, and then move back out of that account into a work in progress account. So what you're seeing is that we're starting to break down the movement of stock into little buckets that help us understand how much we have in inventory and how much we have in the manufacturing process. So in addition to our product, which is worth $10, we're going to inject direct labor and overhead, which is worth $5. So this is going to help us really understand the true cost of manufacturing our products, because we get to add the raw materials and the direct labor and overhead to the work in progress amount, which when we use that to create a product, we end up having $15 worth of finished goods coming out, and that's the amount that goes into our goods delivered account, which again is a contra account. It's AR, clearing, deliveries that we haven't yet assigned a customer. So prior to the goods being received here and after the goods being delivered, we would have the standard accounting entries that would indicate those amounts in accounts receivable and accounts payable. But for this scenario, I'm not going to concentrate on those. So I am going to show this same workflow after the demonstration, just if it's a little bit hard to follow. But like before, we start with a quotation. So we're going to sell to our customer a finished product that we don't have in stock. It's because we need to manufacture that item. So I'm going to confirm that sales order. And if we go have a look at the delivery order, we'll see that, again, it's waiting availability. OpenERP knows that we don't have that product. So just like before, if I go up to the purchases screen, I can see a request for quotation. This time OpenERP is buying an unfinished product because we have something called a bill of materials set up in the system that tells OpenERP all of the different components that go into a finished product. But for simplicity's sake, we have one component called unfinished product, which we manufacture into something called a finished product. So we're going to confirm the order from our supplier here. We're going to receive the products. So we go to our receiving document. We click receive. We receive our unfinished product. Then we open up our second tab. And this time we're not looking at regular external accounting entries. We're looking at internal accounting entries. So if we go down to our journal items here, I'm just going to show you everything that's going to happen here through our stock journal. And you can see that the goods received account was credited. This represents the value of goods that are coming into our warehouse, but we haven't yet assigned them to AP. We haven't yet assigned them to a supplier. And the raw materials account gets debited to indicate that we now have additional raw materials. So by purchasing that one item, we've seen that $10 value move into our raw materials account. And this credit here is going to be moved over to AP as soon as we match up our external accounting entries. So if we go back over here to manufacturing, we're going to see that OpenERP has created a manufacturing order for us. And now that we have received the products, the raw materials, it knows that this manufacturing order can be started. So you can see in blue that it is ready to produce. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go down here and we're going to consume this unfinished product. So I'm going to consume one unfinished product. And I'm doing it this way because I want to show you again the stock accounting entries. So if we go over to our second screen, our second tab, and we update, you can see that now the amount that was debited into raw materials at the bottom has been credited at the very top here to indicate that our raw materials have now disappeared and been translated into work in progress. So our first $10 worth of raw materials has moved over to the work in progress account as soon as we started that manufacturing order. So if I go back to manufacturing orders here, and now I consume this painting product, which is, again, is just the way that we've configured OpenERP to inject the overhead and the labor. So I'm going to consume that. And if I go over to have a look at our journal items now, I can see two new journal items that represent another entry where direct labor and overhead of $5 has been moved into work in progress. So you can see two debits to work in progress, the $10 debit representing the raw materials and the $5 debit representing the direct labor and overhead. So you're starting to see how the true value of our goods that we're manufacturing is appearing here in our stock journal. So the last step is to go back to the manufacturing order and actually finish it. So we're joining together our unfinished product and our painting to actually produce our finished good. So I'm going to confirm that, and then if we go back to our journal items here and update our search, you can see that that $15 that we had in work in progress, that was the result of our raw material and our direct labor and overhead, has been moved out and moved into finished goods. So we've seen the movement of value from raw materials through work in progress into finished goods, capturing accurately the true cost of manufacturing here. If we go back to our manufacturing order, you'll see that it's done. If we go over to our warehouse and we have a look at the delivery orders, we should see that the delivery order is ready to send to our customer. So we're going to deliver that. And if we have a look at our journal items now, we update our search. We see the last journal entry, the $15 from finished goods, is credited now to indicate that it's leaving, and our goods delivered account is debited. And remember, that's a contra account that we're going to move that value over to accounts receivable once we validate the invoice like we did in the first two scenarios to represent our external accounting entries. So if we go back to our slides, the first thing that we saw was when we received something from our supplier, our raw materials account was debited to represent the value of the $10 raw material coming in the door and going into inventory. The next thing we saw was that raw material amount moved out of inventory into work in progress when we started our manufacturing order. The next thing we saw was that our direct labor and overhead amount of $5 moved out of that account into work in progress. So we now have $15 worth of value in work in progress. And then as we complete our manufacturing order, the next entry was a credit for work in progress and a debit to finished goods inventory. And then finally, once we delivered our product, that amount was credited and moved into our goods delivered account. And again, the goods received and the goods delivered account are contra asset accounts, or AP, AR, clearing, accrued inventory, unassigned receivables, unassigned payables, whatever you want to call them in your terminology. So this approach to manufacturing has a few benefits. The first one is that you know your true manufacturing costs. On a manufacturing by manufacturing order basis, it's possible for you to inject overhead representing your administrative costs, your utilities, your labor, and assign those to each manufacturing order. And what this means is that you know how much cash you have on the floor. And so what I mean by on the floor is if it's not in your raw materials inventory, and it's not in your finished goods inventory, it's sitting somewhere in the middle. And quite often companies don't realize how much money is actually represented by all of the unfinished manufacturing orders that they have. And often when we show them how to measure that, they decide that they don't want to have so many unfinished manufacturing orders anymore. So it gives you a more realistic sense of your profit margins on a product-by-product basis. It does require that you do some work to figure out the cost price of that overhead product that we're injecting. And most people do that in a retrospective way. Every couple of months they'll look at their costs, and they'll look at the complexity of their manufacturing orders, and they may have many different products that they inject to represent their overhead and labor. So with a more realistic understanding of your profit margins and your true manufacturing costs, you can improve your profitability by minimizing those. You can improve your cash flow by not having as much of your capital tied up in work in progress, and you can also improve your productivity by measuring the time it takes to produce things and the associated costs with that. So in order to have OpenERP correctly represent this cost flow, you do have to have what are called stock valuation accounts on the product categories. So we have a couple of different categories of products here. We have a raw materials product category, and we have a matching raw materials stock account. We have a manufactured products category, and you can see we have finished goods as the stock account there. And then we have our overhead product, and it might not be intuitive to be representing a service, the overhead and labor that we put in, but this is the way we've worked with a few customers now to more easily represent manufacturing costs by just defining a couple of different products that represent that direct labor and overhead, and updating the cost of those products periodically. Something else that we have to do is on each product we have to set real-time inventory valuation. And so there was a question related to some of the accounting entries in the first two scenarios. We did not have real-time inventory valuation turned on. So real-time inventory valuation gives you all of your internal accounting moves, and those are moves related to the changing value of your components that move out of raw materials into work in progress and through to finished goods. If you don't have inventory valuation set to real time, then you're only going to have the external accounting moves, those that affect accounts receivable, accounts payable, cash, and bank. In addition to inventory valuation set to real time, you need to have stock input and output accounts. So you can see that our raw materials come through this goods received contra account and go straight into work in progress when they leave, so to speak. So when something's taken out of raw materials, it goes into work in progress. For our finished goods accounts, this time when something leaves finished goods, it's coming from the work in progress account and it's going to our goods delivered contra account. And you can see that we also have an income account set on this product so that we can have our external accounting entries correctly configured to the right accounts. And for our overhead, we need the same thing. I've put a little asterisk or star beside the stock input account here. This is never used because we aren't receiving stock of overhead. We're just using the product representation in OpenERP as a way to more easily manage our stock and overhead, our overhead and direct labor costs. So we configure them as a product. They hit work in progress whenever we use them up, but we're never really filling up an inventory of overhead and direct labor. So The next topic that we have here is talking about importing AR and AP, and the actual steps for how to do this we're going to represent as a blog post, because it is a little complicated and probably not the best topic for a short webinar like this. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to have a look at the AP and AR files that we're importing. We're going to import them and show you how you can use them to apply payments to an open invoice. So here's an example of my spreadsheet. This is a direct download from a US bank in CSV file. We have the date of the transaction, the amount of the transaction, and then a description. So this is actually one of our customers that's kindly let us share some of their information. They are a food business. So if we have a look at the version of this spreadsheet that OpenERP needs to see, there's a lot of additional columns. There's columns for the accounts, the journals, the currency, different things here. Again, the way that you know what these columns need to be and what to put in these columns, we're going to describe on our blog. If you look towards the end of the spreadsheet, you can see a couple of additional columns that I've had to put in here. The first one is the date. The date needs to be formatted in a certain way in order to go into OpenERP. So I've added a column that does that, and I have created a column that shows the absolute value of all of the amounts. You can import negative amounts into OpenERP, but they're going to reverse the accounting entries. So because my bank shows both negative and positive amounts, when I download the CSV file, I'm going to change those all here into positive amounts. So if we go back to OpenERP, these are payments. So these are payments from customers and suppliers that have been deposited or withdrawn from our bank account. So I'm going to import this file. Import the second spreadsheet that I showed you. We have to match up some of the columns with OpenERP. If I scroll across, I have to change the date field. I don't want OpenERP to import the date that my bank provided. I want to import the date that I created in the correct format. And similarly, I don't want it to import the total that the bank provided. I want it to import my total and the reference information. So I validate that file. This is a great function where OpenERP can tell you if there are any problems with your import file. I then import it. It takes a little minute, and OpenERP now shows me a whole bunch of customer payments. And likewise, if I go down to Supplier Payments, it shows me my supplier payments. They're all in blue because they're in draft, and they're in draft because I want them. I want to actually go in and set the customer for each one of these payments. I didn't choose to import them with customer information assigned. So I'm going to go search for a particular set of payments that represent payments that this payroll company took from our customer. So the payroll company took $838.93. These are the 4 different payments that represent that amount. So I'm going to open each one of them, and I'm going to edit them to set the correct company. And I could have done this during import, but I'm reflecting exactly what one of our customers does, and they want to use this step to make sure that the payment is assigned to the correct company. So they want to review the payment reference and assign it to the correct company. I need to do that for all 4. So I'm going to go through, set the payroll company, save, go to the next one. And once I've assigned a partner to each of these payments and validated them, I can then use them to apply to an open invoice. Sorry, I just want to mute someone here. If we go back, we have all of our supplier payments. We now see that they're all in gray, indicating that they have been posted. So I'm going to go to our supplier invoices here, and here's the draft invoice that was entered when we received the invoice from our supplier. And instead of manually recording all of the payments that we're making, this particular customer is choosing to have those imported from the bank. So when they go to validate this invoice, they can then go back down to supplier payments, and they can create a supplier payment for this particular company. And what OpenERP does is, in addition to the invoice that's open and needing payment, it brings up the 4 payments that were imported from the bank through the CSV file and automatically tries to match up the payments with the amount due. And so it's correctly assuming that these 4 payments, which are really credits, are being applied to this open invoice. So if I go back here and pay this and save that, then you'll see that our supplier invoice is now paid. So it's an easy way for this particular customer to automate a little more the information that they bring in to represent their payments. So if we go back to our slides, they don't have to reconcile any of their information with their bank statements because the information is coming directly from their bank statements. They save a little bit on data entry. They can see pretty quickly transaction charges and expenses that come in from the bank. And also, because they do this every week, they can detect any fraudulent activity on their bank accounts. For smaller businesses where cash flow might be an issue, you definitely want to make sure that you understand everything about your bank account, what's being charged, and who's taking money out and putting money in. So this is an approach that may not be suitable for larger businesses, but could be something that some smaller businesses would take advantage of. The last topic that we wanted to cover is some of the modules that we're sharing. These are modules that we have worked on with some of our customers, and they are published. You'll see a link for Launchpad. By this time Friday, we will have the last 2 modules that aren't currently on Launchpad. We will have them up. We're just finishing some documentation for those last 2 modules. But you'll see 3 of the modules that are here are already up on Launchpad. 2 of them, the ones in blue, we would consider ready for production. The others, we consider beta. We haven't ironed out all of the different edge cases yet, so we'd love if you would take those and try them out, provide feedback. There are no security rules set up for these modules, so that's something that we will also be doing as we continue to develop them. The first module is something called Account Payment Credit Card, Account Payment CC. What this does is it automates the movement of AP from a payment that you make to a vendor or a supplier, and it moves it over to the credit card company. So if I was to go out and buy a pizza with my credit card, I don't owe the pizza company any money. I owe my credit card company that money. So what this module does is it sets up some new properties on a journal and transfers that AP automatically to the credit card company, so that when I look at my aging, I don't see that I owe the pizza company anything. I see that I owe the credit card company. And when the credit card statement comes in, I can record a payment to my credit card company as normal, and I'll see all of the AP that has been booked against the credit card company, and I can choose what I'm paying on this particular statement. So it makes it a little easy to handle there. This is a module that OpenERP wrote for us. The next module is the Account Deposit module. Standard way that OpenERP represents payments from customers is to credit them in the accounts receivable account. And this may or may not be what you want. In the case of a payment that you received before you exchange goods or services, many companies consider that a liability, and so they want that represented in a different account. So for advanced payments, this is a module that sets up an additional account on the partner and gives you some additional options on the payment screen to actually record the payment as a deposit, and instead of using accounts receivable, you can put that money in an advanced deposit account, and you can better keep track of the liability that you have, because until you provide a good or a service for that customer, they have the right to ask for that money back. The third module is something called Account Transaction History. This is a view that we built to put all of the financial transactions in one place, all payments, all invoices, all credits, all manual journal entries in one place. So it saves time when trying to sort out the financial history or the financial status of a particular customer or supplier. Each of the different financial transactions are shown in a single view. You can click the icon next to the type of transaction to open up the document that shows you the full details. The next module is something called Partners Days to Pay. Adds information to the accounting tab to show the average days that a partner is taking to pay an invoice, as well as the average days that you are taking to pay your supplier invoices. This is very useful when you're negotiating credit terms with your suppliers and credit limits with your customers. You don't want to increase the credit limit of a customer that is not paying on time. The last module is an account aging module that represents the aging on a transactional basis in an interactive view that you can search and filter. An alternative to the standard aging report that comes out as a PDF showing the individual credit or debit balance, and that report usually has to be printed in conjunction with an aged partner balance to show the individual invoices that represent that amount. There's an interactive version of those reports where you can search for a particular customer and you can see not only the total balances for invoices, but anything that's current and anything that's aged. So the benefits of these modules is for things like credit cards and customer deposits, we're moving OpenERP towards becoming more GAAP compliant. We're also saving data entry and a little bit of time. Moving that AP over to the credit card company is a manual step without this module. So it's a streamlined user experience as well, because that step is done in the background automatically. And with things like the financial history and the interactive aging, our customers are able to respond faster to financial inquiries. So with that, I'm going to start answering some questions. There's a question about the address for the blog post that we mentioned. So that blog post is something that I have to work on, and I'll do that by next week. The link at the bottom of the screen, ursainfosystems.com/webinar. Again, by Friday, the slides, the recording, and all of our modules will be available at that link. If you would like to be notified when that happens, you can send an email to contact@ursainfosystems.com, but you'll be able to get to our blog, you'll be able to get to all of the modules and all of these materials from the webinar. So let's go through some of these other questions here. So we have a question from Laura. For internal use, could we create an automatic journal move to bypass the creation of a purchase order if we are manufacturing all of the items in-house? If you don't need a purchase order, I may have to talk to you a little bit, Laura, to understand your question fully. Fred, I think your questions were answered when we showed you the real-time inventory valuation settings when we did and didn't have those in stock. Mike has a question. If our product that was back ordered was made to stock, would OpenERP automatically create a manufacturing order instead of a purchase order? So anything that's made to stock will be manufactured if it is also set up as procure method is make instead of buy, and a bill of materials exists. So if you buy your products, they will automatically generate purchase orders. If you make your products, they will automatically generate manufacturing orders, provided the right information exists in OpenERP. Okay. Here, slides are available for download. They will be available at the link that I mentioned by Friday. How and where are the profit entries configured? So in the example, you saw that our purchase orders were being booked via accounting entries at a different price than our sales, and that's because each of our products have a sales price and a cost price. There are two different cost methods in OpenERP, something called average costing, where your cost is continually going up and down, and you want your inventory revalued every time you purchase something from a supplier. Or you can have your standard cost where you adjust your cost prices once every 6 months or once a year. So if you set up a different cost price and a different sales price for your products, that's going to explain why we have different amounts. Our product that we sold for $10 actually cost us $5. The product that we sold for $25 actually cost us $15. If you remember, we had a component that cost $10 and an overhead injection that cost $5. We had another question about reporting. What reporting integration do we recommend? There are tons of options for integrating and getting financial reports out of OpenERP. One that we use a lot with our customers is something called Accounts, SSTR. So you can search the web for that. It's also possible to use SQL to get reports. It's also possible to customize reports out of the box with OpenERP via OpenOffice or RML. It's also possible to use a third-party reporting engine like Pentaho or Eru. There's tons of options for reporting there. Okay, so here's another question on, oh, we've answered that one. So I have a couple of other questions here that I'm going to answer on our blog, and if we have other questions in the 1 or 2 minutes that we have left, I can answer those. Here's a question: have we considered adding our modules to the US localization project in OpenERP? We would love to work together with the US localization project. We are new to Launchpad and the best way to make our modules available. And yes, the answer is that we would definitely do that, provided that we were invited and we were shown how to do that. As I say, we're a little new to Launchpad. And then we have another question here. Let's see. It appears that when a manufactured item was out of stock and was sold on an invoice, the purchase order had to be validated before the manufacturing order was created. So in our scenario, we did not have any raw materials in stock prior to confirming that sales order. That's why we had a purchase order created. If we did have the raw materials in stock, then the manufacturing order would have been created without that purchase order. So OpenERP is smart enough to check stock levels, say you do have enough for this manufacturing order to be available to start, or you don't. So Laura, I hope that explains. If not, another question. I'd like to thank everyone for their time today. Our contact information is on this final slide. I mentioned that I will continue answering questions that you send in, either now for the rest of today or on our website, the webinar link, ursainfosystems.com/webinar. You can ask us questions from there, and by Friday you'll be able to access all of the slides, the recording, and the links to the modules, although they already are on Launchpad at the link that I gave in the webinar. So if you want to be proactively notified when the materials are available, you can send an email to contact@ursainfosystems.com. And if not, by this time on Friday, which for those of us in the US is 11 o'clock in the morning, for those of you in Europe is probably 6 o'clock on Friday. Again, I'd like to thank you all for your time, and something else that we'd really like to know is future topics for webinars that you'd like to see from us. So if you'd like to send those requests in, we'd love to have another webinar that we can share anything that might help you learn more about OpenERP, whether it be accounting or something else. So have a great day. Thank you all for your time.